I do want to talk about some updates from the Georgia school shooting. We're going to get to American domestic politics. We'll talk about Kamala Harris's campaign event that she just had, where she, of course, talked about the school shooting as well. Here, let's take a look at what's going on. Let's take a look at what's going on in Georgia from the police.
My name is Sheriff Judge Smith. I'm the sheriff of Bexar County Sheriff's Office. We're standing on the campus of Appalachia High School here at Bexar County Schools. First and foremost, I want to lift up our community. I want to give our sympathies to our community, our school system, our kids, our parents that had to witness this today. At about 9:30 this morning, we received the first call that there was an active shooter on this campus. We're not releasing any information as far as injuries, but we have multiple injuries. We do have a suspect in custody, and we are asking for your patience as the media to please let us get the facts that we need to make sure we get this right.
A very dark piece of data. We've now had 15 times more deaths because of mass shootings than undocumented migrants. 386 mass shooting deaths versus 25 undocumented migrants mass shooting data. Yeah. This is more of a failure of gun control, not the failing of the police first, though. Yes, both are at fault. Yeah, of course it's a failure of gun control, a lack of gun control. That's crazy. Of course. This is a legislative problem. Okay, first and foremost. That's it.
But it is our hope, in conjunction with these people behind us, that we can give you another statement around 4 o'clock, because I know you have to go back on the air. That is my hope. But I wanted to be fluid with you all, understanding that it's fluid as well with this investigation. It's very active and is ever developing. Every minute it's developing on what we're finding.
So let's see what I'm sure there's some more coverage on this, but here's what the president released after today's school shooting. Republicans in Congress must finally say enough is enough and work with Democrats to pass common sense gun safety legislation. We must ban assault weapons and high capacity magazines once again, require safe storage of firearms, enact universal background checks, and end immunity for gun manufacturers. Is correct. It is the correct position. No American will come to terms with that, of course. CNN reports a 16-year-old student at Appalachia High School Center. Mama texts, "I'm sorry I haven't been a perfect daughter. I love you." School should be sued for not having armed security guards to guard the kids. Oh, yeah. The shooter, as far as details goes, the shooter is 14 years old. School has been open for like 3 days at this point. And this is happening in Georgia, where the Georgia governor, Brian Kemp, signed a bill allowing guns to be carried without a license. So, 2 days into the school year, already a gun, a mass shooting, a school shooting. Kamala Harris talked about it at the rally.
So before I begin, I do want to say a few words about this tragic shooting that took place.
It just feels so rehearsed, and it feels like we are in this like permanent holding pattern. It comes across, I'm not gonna lie, like they're on the right side of this issue unconditionally, okay? Democrats are on the right side of this issue. Straight up, it's the truth, okay? This is not an endorsement of Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or anything like that, or an endorsement of the Democratic Party. Having said that, however, they are absolutely on the right side of this issue. It's just, that's it. But because it has happened so much and so frequently that like this pattern that we keep repeating over and over again comes across scripted and hollow.
This morning in Winder, Georgia, we're still gathering information about what happened, but we know that
it comes across hollow. It comes across rehearsed. You know what I mean? I don't know how else to describe it.
There were multiple fatalities and injuries. And, our hearts are with.
Bro, I can't even begin to imagine how you do it on Twitter. I tweeted about this earlier today and about about a school shooting that happened in my community, how it's fucked that this still happens. The algorithm must have picked it up. I've gotten threats, DMs, replies from the most unhinged freaks. Just insane. People are actually out of their minds. Like, holy dude, I don't know how you do it every day. You have to remember, these are not real human beings, okay? Just remember that and you'll be fine. These are not real human beings, okay? Like they're human beings, but they're barely sentient. There's something about Twitter, especially now Twitter, that has caused all the worst aspects of like these subhuman scumbags to just feel emboldened, okay? To say whatever the they want to say. Those people would not carry that same energy in the real world. That's it. Those people do not exist in the real world for the most part. And some of them are literally bots, like AI. This issue will never be tackled because 6% of shootings happen in private schools, so it doesn't affect rich people as much. All the more reason to ban private schools so the rich can actually care about safety and education. That's an interesting attitude I had not considered. But I think it just simply won't get solved because the Republican Party owns like unlimited, unrestricted access to weapons as a major policy position. And it's a very popular policy as well. When I was younger, I was one of the it's not a gun problem people. Because of you and people like you, I saw the error in my thinking and the truth. Thanks, man. Exactly. And that's precisely why I do what I do. That and also serving 3-minute ad breaks at the top of the hour. Okay. Those are the two reasons why I do what I do, you know, because at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. I don't think that there is going to be a mass like event that causes Americans to wake up to this reality of school shootings and where it comes from and how to stop it, for the record.
With all the students, the teachers, and their families, of course. And we are grateful to the first responders and the law enforcement that were on the scene. But this is just a senseless tragedy on top of so many senseless tragedies. And it's just outrageous that every day in our country, in the United States of America, that parents have to send their children to school worried about whether or not their child will come home alive.
Is Kamala promising more gun control? Yeah. I mean, that's the basic Democratic position. Anyway, update on the mass shooting is going to come in the next 30 minutes, by the way.
The third and important question is access to the gun. Everyone knows Georgia's gun laws are permissive. It's just, this isn't a political commentary. They are exceptionally permissive. And that means that the parents or someone who had the gun made it either available to him or he took it from them. We need to get more aggressive against adults who buy these weapons and make them accessible or allow them to be accessible to a 14-year-old. And I guess the last question, of course, is motive. Was this against a particular person, a classroom? What was his reason for doing it? But you and I have been doing this long enough. Sometimes the motive isn't satisfying. It's just someone who's gets guns and wants to use them in a violent manner, and we can blame mental health or whatever else, but it doesn't really get to why this morning.
And for those who don't know, some parts of the country have safe storage laws, meaning that there needs to be a trigger lock or the firearm needs to be stored in some sort of safe so that minors cannot get the gun or anyone else cannot get the gun.
Yeah, we already have a Gen Alpha mass shooter. The child was born in 2010, has spent over 1/3 of their life in a COVID, post-COVID world. Yeah. I mean, people are like, oh, how could this have happened? Like, he's 14 years old. He's so young. And it's like, what do you mean? Open your eyes, dude. This is the most American thing. It is actually shocking when it doesn't happen all the time. It is so American to do a school shooting. It is so ingrained in our DNA at this point, especially as a consequence of the mass availability of weapons, that we had a trans shooter. Okay. Like, do you understand how commonplace it needs to happen? How commonplace of a thing this is, that there is a trans person that did a school shooting. Like, that's how American this is. Like, that's how American it is 1% of the population. Everybody gets a piece at this point. I'm honestly surprised there was this long of a gap between school shootings. There wasn't. It's just this one is like something that the media is paying more attention to. And also the gap between school shootings is called summer break. That's just what it is. It's called summer break. That's the gap between school shootings. The school year literally just started 2 days ago, dude. 2 days. We say it's got to stop, but I've covered this so much. I've covered this so much, and it literally is unfathomable. The fact that we've made no movements in the right direction in terms of like a reasonable solution to this problem. I don't know what to say. It's just, and the defense of it basically becomes more and more unhinged. Like, we joke about this at this point where like we've moved on from gun control, which you cannot talk about. Obviously, Democrats talk about it, but it goes nowhere. Republicans will say that's never going to happen. Shut the fuck up. So they end up talking about the background of the shooter and claiming that like, the shooter is trans over and over again. Ridiculous, right? Or the shooter is an undocumented migrant or whatever the they want to shift the blame over to. Then if there's no background that they can shift the blame over to, they start talking about how, well, it's a mental health problem. There's a ton of mentally ill people, dude. And all around the world, as a matter of fact. So why the fuck aren't they having the same exact issues? Perhaps it's because there's one significant difference in the United States of America as opposed to all the other developed nations where, they don't have more guns in circulation than there are people in this country. Turns out that might be a big reason. And they say mental health, and they never actually do anything about the mental health problem anyway. It's just the same shifting of the responsibility and shifting of the blame cycle all over again. Mental health is a problem. Okay, so let's solve it. Let's do healthcare. No. Mental health is a problem. Okay, so let's do red flag laws. No. Then what the fuck? And when all is said and done, when you don't have those other issues that you can point to, then Republicans get really unhinged. Door control, security guards. Oh, there's a security guard at this school that was armed. Okay, then we have to fix the doors. We got to do door control. There wasn't actually there was door control now. Okay, well, how about we arm the teachers? Okay, teachers are armed now in the Pioneer program in Florida and many other places. Okay, well then, how about bulletproof backpacks? Classrooms that have like bulletproof areas. It just doesn't matter. These people are unhinged. Georgia's lieutenant governor wants to also pay teachers $10,000 a year to carry guns at school. Barrow County Superintendent Chris McNeil said that although his district allows the security chief to carry a gun, the school board would have to carefully examine arming other employees. He supports increases funding to our school resource officers, saying the district has 15 to 16 officers, not enough to have one in each of his 20 schools. Barrow County Sheriff Judd Smith was more enthusiastic, saying armed teachers could be a force multiplier in the case of a shooting. It's like a fucking joke, dude. It's insane. But that is American politics. American politics is finding the most unreasonable, most unhinged non-solution that will literally increase the frequency of gun violence at schools. Like anyone with a shred of intelligence can look at that and go, really? You want to arm teachers? You think having easier access to guns will solve the problem of school shootings? Why not arm the students too? Because once they arm the teachers, that's the next step. It is insane. Fuck it, dude. YOLO. Let's arm everybody. You know, remember the New York Police Department, which is supposed to be adequately trained in active shooting scenarios, their on target hit rate in an active shooting is 17%. Those are the cops. Now, imagine what a teacher would do in an active shooting scenario. How many of their own students will they accidentally dome? It's insane. Additionally, insane to think when more guns means a higher likelihood of a gun being stolen from a teacher to literally conduct a mass shooting directly on site. I like that we're basically making it easier to do mass shootings by putting more guns in classrooms. That will definitely solve the problem. None of this shit makes sense. Nothing makes sense in the United States of America because we are way too primed to not solve these issues. We have no interest in solving these problems.
At approximately 10:20 a.m. this morning, the Barrow County Sheriff's Office received alerts about reports of an active shooter and radio traffic from school resource officers concerning the same concern, or having the same concern. Within minutes, law enforcement was on scene, as well as 2 school resource officers assigned here to the school who immediately encountered the subject with just minutes of this report going out. Once they encountered the subject immediately surrendered to these officers and he was taken into custody. Additionally, what I want you to know as of now, there are 4 individuals who are deceased from this incident, 9 that have been taken to local hospitals with various injuries. Of those that are deceased, 2 are students and 2 are teachers here at the school. Again, he has been taken into custody. He will be charged with murder and he will be tried as an adult.
The thing is, what are they supposed to do? They can't fucking like. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's not the cops' fault. Okay, what are they supposed to do? Envision a school shooting happening ahead of time and like apprehend the child on the way to the school? You know what I mean? Everyone has a gun. Like, what are they supposed to do? Apprehend thought crimes or some shit? Like, there's not really much you can do. There's not much you can do other than precog.
I don't know why it happened. I may not ever know. We may not ever know. But I ask that you and our community lift up our schools, lift up our public safety, and that, again, we do not let this hateful event prevail as to what
it's crazy because in like other normal countries, this is not a defense of police at all, but in other normal countries, it's actually police that are absolutely in favor of like restrictions on weapons. In America, it's the opposite. Cops are also super right wing and consistently advocate for looser gun regulation, which is always odd because it's making your job harder, you dumb
Lift up these families, continue to lift up our students and our kids, and know that love will prevail.
You're shocked that the police
As
didn't
we
kill the
grieve
shooter? That's not shocking at all. Most mass shootings literally end with like an unarmed good guy putting their bodies on the line. Like that's statistically an unlikely scenario, is a mass shooting ending with cops coming and shooting the shooter. Oftentimes the shooter will just do a mass shooting and then kill
Obviously,
themselves.
the shooter was armed, and our school resource officer engaged him. And the shooter quickly realized that if he did not give up, that it would end with an OIS, or an officer-involved shooting. He gave up, got on the ground, and the deputy took him into custody.
A lot of people in the chat would gladly support the death penalty, I guess. Yeah, I mean, look, that's neither here nor there. America has the death penalty. This kid will probably be, he's going to be tried as an adult, and he'll probably get the death penalty. Will that actually stop more mass shootings from happening? No. That's just revenge. That's bloodlust. And it's ironically the same exact bloodlust that we have in every orifice of our unimaginably violent culture that causes a 14-year-old to engage in this kind of action to begin with. America is a powder keg, okay, waiting to explode. And as a matter of fact, explodes on a regular basis. We're in a death spiral. No one seems to recognize it. And it's always short-term, immediate gratification. We're so primed towards that. It's like, oh yeah, we'll kill this 14-year-old and then, problem solved. It's like, no, dude, that's not going to solve the problem. What will solve the problem is making it harder for people to have weapons, okay? That will solve the problem. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to do it. So we'll just get that immediate gratification from like killing a 14-year-old. Yeah, he's violent.
Keep in mind that
he's evil, okay? Of course. It's still a 14-year-old, though. We have to look at how a 14-year-old gets to this point. If you want to actually solve an issue, you have to literally analyze how the did a 14-year-old get to this point? How did this happen? Okay, that's a minor. That's a child. Isn't the owner of the firearm responsible?
You
anyway?
have been listening to.
Yes, his parents will. There was an instance where a minor did this last year or 2 years ago, and yes, their parents were held responsible. Of course, and they should be.
As we learned there, this juvenile, this 14-year-old, will be tried as an adult, which in the state of Georgia for offenses, serious offenses like a capital offense involving murder, involving a potential death penalty, those will go to adult court. So we got that detail, but still a lot we don't know about the weapon itself, and that's key for me right now is how did a 14-year-old gain access to this firearm. We've seen in a number of instances, such as at Oxford High School, the shooter's parents there were prosecuted for their ability to help him get that firearm. We also saw in...
Give him the electric shock penalty over and over and over. Dude, you're talking about a 14-year-old, dog. Do you hear yourself? Do you think that's going to solve anything? Like, I get it. People are emotional about the situation, but like, you understand that like we have so many fucked up sequences of action in full display when you got a 14-year-old that's like doing such a thing. The entire point of legislation is supposed to be to prevent these sorts of things from happening in the future. Right? That's the argument made for the capital penalty, for the capital punishment, for the death penalty. The argument made for the death penalty is it's a deterrence. It'll scare people into so that people will be afraid to commit such an atrocity in the future. But ain't no mass shooter gives a shit about being murdered. Okay? Most of them killed themselves in the process. Justice is not vengeance. The entire point and purpose of laws, rules, regulations, and criminal punishments for acts is supposed to ensure that it doesn't happen again. A deterrence, if you will. Unfortunately, in the United States of America, our laws are completely f***ed, and seemingly the violence has not stopped. If anything, it's gotten worse. So what do we do? It seems like in terms of gun violence, there is one thing that is different from every other country. Because when you look at other Western developed nations, argument falls apart that it's mental health. Because everywhere else, they have the same number of mental health problems, the same percentage of mental health complications, and yet they don't have gun violence. They don't have mass shootings. What you're supposed to look at in a situation like this is how do we get here and how do we make sure that this never happens again? That is the point and purpose of the criminal justice system. That's it. That's what the actual true purpose of the criminal justice system is. That's what it's supposed to do. And if we have been moving in the direction of further and further punitive measures for any kind of crime, not just this one, but just any crime in general, and yet it has not solved the issues of gun violence, perhaps it's time to look at something else. Guns. The mass availability of weapons makes it incredibly likely that gun violence will occur. That's it. There are a million different studies conducted on this matter, but even if you don't want to look at studies, you can look at comparable nations. There's one other nation in the European continent, Switzerland, that has higher levels of gun ownership than all of the other Western nations in Europe. Switzerland also happens to have higher rates of gun violence than all of the other nations in Europe. Having said that, however, Switzerland, despite having a heavily armed citizenry, still does not have anywhere near the rates of gun violence that America experiences. Perhaps there is a reason for that. The reason is reasonable gun violence prevention measures, legislation, gun control. That's it. They're not wizards. They're not operating on a different plane of existence. They're human beings. Social safety nets, of course, factor into this. But you have to understand, like, I am calling for cooler minds to prevail here. You lived up, brother. I like guns. I like shooting guns. You know this already. I do not have a problem with just like a firearm in general. Having said that, however, it is unconscionable that everyone and anyone could just have a gun, carry it, take it from their parents, and use it. Guns have one purpose and one purpose only. It is to end life. That's it. The first thing that someone at a firing range will tell you is how to responsibly use the gun, because those motherfuckers understand it better than anyone else, because if mistakes are made, they'll die. It is not an accident that gun violence is significantly lower in states where there are more restrictions on access to weapons. California comes to mind, even Illinois, where Chicago is, that everybody talks about all the goddamn time, still has a lower gun violence rate than the national average. And Chicago, Illinois specifically, is obviously right next to a bunch of states where there's no gun restrictions, no gun legislation whatsoever, which is precisely the reason why the overwhelming majority, if not near entirety of the guns purchased and used in gun violence in the state of Illinois, in Chicago, are actually purchased outside of the state. You just drive a couple miles, cross a state boundary, and you bring that gun into the state. There is no argument against reasonable, common sense gun violence. Are you reading this from Twitter? No, I am a political commentator for the past 10 years. If you think this is my first foray into responsible gun safety arguments, I don't know what else to tell you. Twitter, he says. Yeah, I went to the Nazi website to learn about responsible gun violence prevention measures.